morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Charter Authorizing Panel meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for your patience this morning. And we have a short agenda today, but I really appreciate everyone being on the line. I'll just go through very quickly for the record. We have Dr. Mike Hernandez, Dr. Neckerman Williams, Dr. Angela Kramer, Ms. Toyce Newton, and Mr. Mike Wilson all joining the meeting today. And we have, and I'm Ivy Pfeffer, chair of the panel. So at this time, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first item on our agenda is to approve the consent agenda from last month, or on the consent agenda, or to approve the minutes from last month. And you have a copy of those there. So once you've had a chance to look at those, I would take a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. And we will now move into our action agenda item. And again, we appreciate all of you for being here. This action agenda relates back to what we discussed last month in the changes that have taken place to the standards for accreditation and the need for our charters, our district conversion charters, to have all of their waivers mapped to the new standards for accreditation. And last month at the meeting, the panel determined that they would like to move forward with getting school districts and conversion, open enrollment and conversion charter schools updated in the most streamlined way as possible and also in the most timely fashion. So today we have several of our open enrollment charters who have worked with our charter unit to map their old waivers to the new standards for accreditation. So I want to commend our legal team and our charter unit for the hard work that they've done and the outreach they've provided and support to those districts, and we appreciate the districts for working with us. Panel members, you might find it helpful to pull up the new standards for accreditation document. I believe that is on your agenda, and it was also emailed to you this morning if you need it for quick reference. But it can be helpful in case there are any questions about any of the waivers. And our plan is to approve all of these as a batch unless there are questions and a panel member feels like one of the conversion charter waivers would need to be pulled for separate consideration. So at this time, if there aren't any procedural questions, I'll open it up to questions from panel members about the individual district applications or the waivers, and see if our legal team or someone from our charter office can answer any questions.
Yes, this is Neckerman. Just a quick question. Did the AD staff just go through? I know different schools would have different waivers, and they went through and made the necessary adjustments for each individual school. Was that the case?
And Dr. Williams, I'm going to recognize Ms. Mary Claire Hyatt to answer your question.
Mary Claire Hyatt, Attorney, Arkansas Department of Education. Two things. First, I just wanted to point out that these are district conversions, not open enrollments. I think that there's a typo on the agenda. But to answer your question, the process was we emailed the 3 options for moving forward that we presented to you last charter meeting to all of the district conversions and open enrollment charter schools, allowed them to choose which option that they would like to use for mapping over their old waivers of the old standards for accreditation to the new. We worked with district conversions the past couple of weeks, set up meetings with each school leaders, and if they had a representative like an attorney or something, they were on the call as well. We had a spreadsheet with each school's waivers of the old standards, what we consider to be the mapping over to the new standards for accreditation. Went through each one on the phone with the leaders from the charter school, asked any questions that we had to ensure that we were covering everything that they had in the old standards to the new, because since there was such a big change between the two of them, it wasn't exactly just word for word the same. So there was some conversations had about what exactly they needed in order to keep their program the same. And then once we got off the phone, I updated that spreadsheet, sent it back to the charter leaders so that they could review it and ensure that everything that we had was what they wanted to agree upon, ask any questions that they had, and then confirm that those were the waivers that they intended to seek. And then we put them in the form of the amendment request that you have attached to the agenda.
And Dr. Williams, as a follow-up, if a district conversion charter goes back and looks and decides that maybe there was anything additional that would need to be adjusted, they can always come back in our next meeting and add anything additional. So we're going to continue working on this process, but it is helpful in the organization to see what they previously had the waiver from, so we appreciate having that information as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Dr. Pepper, I just had one quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Dr. Hernandez.
So a number of these have the waiver for class size and teaching load, and I know it references in the standards for accreditation waiver the 1-A6. Now, does that cover pending rules for class size load, or do they have to get a waiver from that also when it gets approved?
Ms. Hyatt, would you repeat his question? Because
Sure.
It was a little bit hard to hear.
So a lot of the charter schools had a waiver of the old class size and teaching load provisions. In the new standards, all it says is that you will follow the class size and teaching load rules, which are currently being promulgated, so they're not final. When we map them over, the new waiver 1A6 is the new standard that says you have to follow the class size and teaching load rules. So I think Dr. Hernandez is asking, will they have to then seek a waiver of the class size rules when they're finalized? The answer to that is yes, and we notified everyone on the phone when we were communicating with them about that and told them to keep an eye out for the commissioner's memo when those rules were final. And also we have a list of them and plan to communicate with them when the rules are final so that they can submit a request.
Okay, so that was my question as well. We'll actually help provide that technical assistance to those that we know have requested this waiver, just to make sure it does get updated. And for those, for the panel members who don't know, those rules are going through the promulgation process and will be before the legislative committee next month. So, so we'll just continue working with those schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And the same issue also on the new requirements for districts for their websites, since those are changing. It's kind of the same situation as the class size rules. So when any of the rules are final, we plan to have communication with the charter schools to let them know that they have been changed and see what they need a waiver of from those rules.
Okay. Panel members, any other questions?
Madam Chairman, this is Mike Wilson. I had a question concerning the standards themselves as they apply both to traditional public schools and charter schools. And it concerned notification to the public of accreditation status. I'm looking at the document or the page number ADE 282-8. ADE 282-8. And I read that provision to say that individual notice must be given to the parents or guardians of each student, as well as published in the newspapers notice. I wonder if that's what is intended by the standards, that there must be an individual notice to the parents or guardians of each student enrolled. I don't think it was intended that way, but that's the way I'm reading that, and that means a terrible lot of notices, maybe.
Ms. Hyde, are you aware of what he's looking at? Okay, so in the standards rules, okay. Ms. Hyde, would you?
Sure, if you'll just give me just a second
Sure.
to read.
Yeah,
what-
we're working on an answer, Mr. Wilson.
Well, I may be confusing everyone. I hope not, but I just noticed that in general terms, both to public or charter schools.
Okay, so in section 12.00, it says that they have to publish the accreditation status, determination, and findings of the State Board of Education to the public and the parents of each student. And then 12.01 through 12.03 describe what that publication needs to look like. So 12.01 says it must be in an understandable and uniform format. 12.02 says that it has to be immediately after the state board's determination and then on the website and published in the newspaper. So those are the ways that it would be published to the parents and to the public. There's not anything in here that says that they have to send a notice to each individual parent. Having it on the website and publishing it in the newspaper would satisfy that requirement.
And as the rules were promulgated, I think the goal there was to have transparency and adequate notice for the public. Did Ms. Hyde answer your question?
It's getting close, and it may be that I misinterpreted the requirement of published notice, but it uses the terms parents and guardians of each student, and that I don't think was intended. I think it's published in the newspapers and on websites and so forth. I just point that out for the general information of everybody, since I don't believe it was intended or is intended to require status notice to be given to each individual parent or guardian of each student.
I believe in
when
the.
I read it, but it may not look that way to everybody.
I believe in the code section, it does require that notice be given to parents of each student from the law, but that the website posting and the newspaper posting satisfy that requirement because the parents of every student would have access to one of those two means.
Well, in general, I'm personally satisfied with the answers, and I hope nobody else misunderstands it like I did.
Okay. Are there any other questions related to the waivers that are being sought?
No, not by me.
Dr. Pfeffer, this is Angela Kramers.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is for legal review. When they were looking at the waivers, the status they were, and then as they transitioned them to align with the new accreditation standards, were there any pauses on their part as they were doing that? You know, any feedback or concern, if any, as they were doing that process?
So there were several schools where we asked additional questions. I think in previous years, waivers of curriculum were given when schools were embedding curriculum into other classes. And now that process is, it exists in its own process. And so we did find out through this that a lot of them had curriculum waivers of things like graduation requirements, and it was so they could embed it. So we had conversations with each school about any of the waivers that seemed to maybe be a waiver of graduation requirement as it relates to 9 through 12 curriculum. And we just had general questions because, for instance, the superintendent licensure and employment standard used to be one, and it is now two standards. So we had questions
This is
about
Mike Wilson. I'm still on.
which,
This is McAvan Williams. I'm still on.
we asked them questions about which of the two they would need or if they needed both. So I mean, we did have questions about that. We also asked questions about family and community engagement because there were some that had waivers of that, and we just needed to make sure we weren't waiving anything that was in our federal ESSA plan. So does that answer your question?
It did. A little bit hard to hear. There's an echo, and I'm catching like every third thing you're saying, so I apologize, but it sounds like in total that yes, you guys had extensive conversations with each of the schools, so yes, that helps very much. Thank you.
And Dr. Kramers, I'll follow up. We may be having an issue with the microphone, but the legal team did do the follow-up questions, and they went through and looked at the special scenarios that might have existed. One of the and I had wanted them to talk a little bit about the curriculum waivers. There were cases where they wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on what a curriculum waiver really meant in terms of it's still having to offer required courses for graduation, but having some flexibility with curriculum. So I think that they feel comfortable after going through these, and because the new standards actually delineate or separate out some components that had been combined earlier, it even allowed for more customization for districts to waive what was needed to be waived, and to be clear on what they were doing.
Great, thank you. That's very clear. Thank you.
In terms of the curriculum waivers, if anyone had a waiver of anything for 9 through 12, we did get verbal confirmation, and also when we sent them the spreadsheet and had them sign off on it, that they knew that the waiver did not mean that they had a waiver of any of the graduation requirements. So it would be anything over the graduation requirements that the curriculum waiver required. So we did make sure that that was really clear when we communicated with those schools.
Okay, are there any remaining questions? All right, well, if we're comfortable with the process, the mapping process, and with the updates to these waivers, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and we will update our district conversion charter waivers to match the new standards. Panel, again, I appreciate you, and we will be going through a similar process at next month's meeting with open enrollment charters. We will likely continue to see some of these on our agenda going forward as new rules and regs are promulgated. I do appreciate this, but I do think it's been a good process, and appreciate the work of everyone. Ms. Hyatt or Ms. McLaughlin, are there any other items remaining on our agenda? Okay, so our next meeting is scheduled for October, and does somebody want to give us a quick update again, or a reminder of what we'll have in October, the date, and I think it's amendment requests, is that correct? Okay, Ms. McLaughlin, you are recognized.
This is Kelly McLaughlin from the Charter Office. We will have any amendment requests for open enrollment and district conversions, and we'll be moving forward with the standards transitions.
Okay, and that meeting is scheduled for October.
And we will also.
What dates in October?
I believe it's 17th and 18th, but it hopefully will only take one day. And I did fail to mention we will have one district conversion application as well.
Okay,
So
so
we
we're gonna try for a 1 day in October, but it may be possibly be 2. Right now, we have 2 days scheduled.
We do
so
have
need
2
to
days
hold those.
scheduled, and if we are able to complete everything in the first day, then we'll just cancel the second.
Okay, all right. And so they will be in communication with panel members in preparation for that meeting. And panel members, is there anything else we need to discuss or any questions you have?
None here.
Well, if not, I hope everyone has a great day. If you have a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
have a
Second.
motion and a second. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.